regard, this is no joke, because these things will follow you home, or they can attach to you, and they can wreck your life, your marriage, your kids, your family, your dog, your pet, your job, your car, your house, you name it. So it's no joke. You've got to protect yourself. Definitely read all you can, get all the knowledge you can, and find somebody that's reputable. That's the best way, and pick their brain, maybe like a ride-along. Go with them to investigate. Just be quiet and watch. Take notes. Take all the notes you can. That's definitely what I would say. And as far as equipment goes, don't go out and buy a bunch of bells and whistles, high-dollar equipment till you've been in the business a while. I mean, even to this day, I use a camera and a recorder and my cell phone, and I'm good. But that's just me. But, I mean, you just got to get all the knowledge and experience you can, but you got to do it the right way. Just don't go off with a bunch of group of friends and say, hey, let's go in this old building here and start investigating, and not protect yourself or know what you're doing. And another thing, some of these places are dangerous all on their own. They got you fall through the floor, or they got bad mold in there and make you sick. I mean, there's a lot of variables that go into these things. It's not just like you see. Don't go by what you see on TV. Don't do that, because I'm going to tell you, I spend most of my time going over evidence. It's boring as hell. So that would be my advice to them, for sure, for anybody starting out or wanting to start out.
Well, how about like cemeteries? Have you done much in cemeteries?
I have. I don't do much with cemeteries, but sometimes I'll go out. I use cemeteries. There's one behind my house, about 50 yards. I mess around with all these phone apps and see if there's any names any good. I found out of hundreds of maybe one or two that's decent. I use them for practice out there with that. Sometimes you will. I mean, sometimes you won't. Some cemeteries, that's another thing you should, before you all go run off into any cemetery, look up the history on it. If it's known that there was, black magic done there, or somebody's doing rituals, or somebody's history of that, or a history of somebody getting attachments there or something, try to read up. Believe me, if there is, you'll find out, and you got to protect yourself. Just don't stop along the road somewhere. Oh, there's a cemetery. No, you still got to protect yourself. It's dangerous, could be there too. But yeah, I've done cemeteries.
Yeah, I did a cemetery one time, about 10 months ago. I was very naive. I didn't really check out the cemetery. And it's an old one by our house. It goes back to like 1870s and stuff like that. And me and my one son walked there with a recorder. We walked around. I didn't hear any sounds or anything. I got home and I played back the recorder, and I heard like children sounds. And I go, oh, I'm so excited. Well, no. Wow. The next morning, I decided I wanted to check out the cemetery. And at the back of the cemetery, there was no houses to the left, no houses to the right. It was just woods. I walked to the very end of the cemetery, and 30 feet of, pine trees and fir trees and all that stuff. I kind of walked a little bit farther in there, and there was a house behind it with, the swing set and all that stuff. And I figured, oh, well, that was my children noise.
That is a huge problem with any type of investigation outside, especially EVP work, because of contamination. Even at Gettysburg is just you've got contamination. Most of it you got to throw out, because even if you don't see something like you just said, even at Gettysburg, there was people 100, 150 yards away, and with that granite, the way it's set up, it echoed through. I actually picked them up on my recorder. So, yeah, contamination is a nuisance in the outdoors, especially at cemeteries, for sure.
Well, you never know who might be, hiding out at the cemetery either, and it might not be, a demon or.
That's the thing. Richard Ramirez used to do blood sacrifice and all kind of rituals down there in that cemetery in Texas, Cordonia Cemetery. So you got a bunch of people like him out there, be like me, sneaking up on that group. I mean, listen, who knows what might happen?
Yeah, so you recommend not to go to cemetery at nighttime?
Not without doing some kind of history on it and find out. I mean, if you're like cemetery down in Cordonia, Texas, I wouldn't advise going there by yourself at 2, 3 in the morning. There may be some, not spirits there, but just some shady people. I mean, you got to investigate the area wherever you're at and do a little homework.
Oh, yeah. So you're saying they really don't need to go out and buy a couple $100 recorder. They don't need to go out and buy all this fancy, infrared cameras and all this stuff to start out with.
Honestly, I wouldn't. Listen, when I started out, and I still use it this day, I use flour. I'll put flour down and marbles and matchboxes. If those things move, I know, or if you can tell if something's touched it or moved it. A recorder and a camera, and I'm good. But, well, I'm like a walking EMF. I can just feel spirits when they're around, but most people can't. But regardless, you got a camera and a recorder. Ghost boxes and stuff, I'm not sold on those all the way, or REM pods. I've used them. I've had some results with them, but the thing is, who knows if they're really accurate? I mean, really, I don't know. I just don't know. I've had some good results, and I've had some that be like, I don't know.
Well, because I have electronic background. It goes all the way back. I mean, I was a CBer at 10 years old. I was a licensed amateur at 12. I was in commercial broadcasting for many years. My dad was a electronic engineer. I mean, I learned a lot. I used to design computers in the 80s. So I got a vast knowledge of electronics. But, going into like these radios, they modify them. They're phase lock circuitry. So when they open it up, it scans the frequencies, right? So, I mean, It's scanning the whole FM band or the whole AM band, which way they have it set up. And the thing is, I guess if you want to hear something bad enough and it's going through the frequencies really fast, I think you're going to hear sometimes stuff that you're asking. It's going to pop up because it's scanning up and down, up and down.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I'm very sensitive. So those like loud spirit boxes and the other one there, the SB7, I think it is, or the obvious. Some of them so loud, they drive me crazy. I can't. They just drive me bonkers. I can't listen to them, and I just can't. I mean, I'm not hacking them. For me, it doesn't work for me. I'm just saying, best thing to do, especially if you're starting out, I'd start out just recorder, a camera, and take some trigger objects, maybe a ball or a car, marbles or something, and leave them there. Don't take them away. We might get something to happen, but. And respectful. I'm always very respectful because spirits of the dead, I treat them just like human living beings because they were. And the thing is, you've got good and bad people walking around today, and when they die, especially if they didn't cross over and they were a bad, kind of a nasty, bad person, they're even worse as a spirit. So the worst thing you can do is go poking them, like poking a rat in a bag and putting it on your head. I don't suggest doing that at all. But that'd be my advice. Be respectful and get all the information you can.
Well, just think about this. I mean, if you're a spirit, for example, right, and you didn't cross over, and you were a real frickin' butthole when you were alive, right? Now, you're going to be, regardless, I don't know how a spirit thinks. I'm not there yet, so I don't know. But I would imagine if they would have any, and I think to be able to scratch people, touch people, slam doors, they have capabilities of thinking. So my feeling is they would be really resentful and hate a lot. Yeah. Some of them would really hate, I hate to say it, probably hate God and hate humanity.
Right, and now factor in this. Now, here's some other factors to think about. Now, okay, so they were already a bad person, maybe even killed a few people. Who knows? So now they died, didn't cross over. Maybe they didn't cross over because they was afraid they was going to go to hell. Who knows the reason? But now, say this was 100 or 150 years ago. Now, they're already cantankerous and are a bad person, but now guess what? Now they have a secret weapon to use, which is most people, 9 out of 10 people, can't see or hear them or feel them. So they have that as a weapon of invisibility against most people. So now they've got that. Now, after 100, 150 years, maybe they're so frustrated, maybe they change their mind, maybe they do want to cross over. And so now they're trying to get your attention, and they'll scratch you, hit you, throw something because they're frustrated, just trying to get your attention to help them cross over. There's a lot of variables and factors that go into these things, but yeah, and it can brew. If somebody's already bad, it can even brew them to be even worse. No, there's no doubt about that.
Well, I found, James, I had a mystic, or a medium, I should say, Valentina was on my show a couple of times, and she would say that sometimes when she would be, doing her thing, sometimes like whatever that evil or whatever that spirit was with that person, that person would leave, she would go home, and all of a sudden she would find that entity followed her and left the other person, and now she had to worry about cleansing herself and getting rid of it.
Yes, that's one of the things I talk about, man. You got to keep spirits from following you and keep them from attaching to you. You've got to be on that, especially if you're a medium. You've got to be on that twice a day, maybe more, to protect yourself, to keep them from following you and attaching you. Especially if you're a medium or got abilities, you're like a beacon in the night to anybody that has abilities. If you're a spirit and you see somebody with abilities, they're like a beacon to the night to you, and they're going to be drawn to them for various reasons. So you've got to protect yourself, and you don't want to follow them home. You don't want them attaching to you. So, yeah, she needed to step up her game on protection for sure.
Oh, yeah. And she, in one case, she said she came home and she went to bed, and all of a sudden she was getting scratches on her arms and legs. And it was really, the point where it was bleeding and stuff like that. And her boyfriend kind of looked at her like, you're doing this yourself. You have to be doing it. And then all of a sudden, I guess her boyfriend was right there, and all of a sudden a long scratch started appearing, on her arm till it was bleeding right in front of him, and that's all it took. Now, I'm going to say one thing. People aren't used to, I don't take call-ins, as you know. And I'm going to just see if anybody is willing to give a call-in if they want at 1-253-203-6695, 1-253-203-6695. You can call in. Again, I don't know if anybody will because they're not used to it. But getting back to this, I mean, you got to be really careful when you get out and do all this stuff. But not just that, you're going out and investigating an old warehouse, an old house. How do you know that you're not going to be walking and all of a sudden fall through the floor, too, and kill yourself that way?
Exactly. I stress that too. These old buildings, man, you don't know. I've fallen through places. So yeah, there's a lot of different things that go in. There's a lot of variables that go into it. It's not just, okay, let's go here and let's just do it. And then, a lot of people like to trespass. That's another thing. You might want to get permission for you just jump into somebody's house.
Oh yeah. Now, the question I have too is, and it's a really dumb question, but when people go out and try to get, recordings of spirits on their recorder and stuff, and they ask questions, I never hear, like on that Ghost Hunters and all that stuff that was on TV for years, all that stuff, I never hear anybody ask, does anybody want a cigarette? I don't understand that, because how many people, especially back even 20, 30 years ago, smoked a lot more than now. I would think if you wanted to get something talking back to you, do you want a beer or do you want a cigarette?
It's funny you should say that, because I don't even smoke, but I have actually used cigarettes as a trigger object in certain places and lit them and said, take a drag off of it or whatever. And I've had a few results, but yeah, it's funny you say that. I have did that a couple times, but yeah, you don't see that. You would think especially investigating prisons like Alcatraz or Mansfield, which is up the road from me, and places like that, or Eastern State, or Moundsville even.
Well, most prisons nowadays, they're banned. They can't smoke. But going back 20 years ago, I mean, smoking was the biggest thing other than weird things. But, and then you also had the occult members, even in prisons. I mean, and I'm just, prisons and mental institutions, I think, are so rich in entities
Let me tell
and
you
stuff.
something. Just about every defunct prison that I know of has got some serious, real evil incarnate in them somewhere. Seriously. It's just a breeding ground of it. And then you mix in some spirits of prisoners that were just dirt dog bad, and it can really get into some bad stuff. You really got to protect yourself when you go in places like that.
So what do you think about some of these shows? Because I actually was going to have the guy on my show, and then he backed out. But he was on one of the cable channels, Travel Channel, on one of those ghost hunting shows for years. He told me that they would go out And if they didn't find any,